Hello, students. Hope you all are doing good. Today, we are going to start with our chapter number 9 of history, that is challenging the caste system. Here in this chapter, we will be getting to know more about it, who were the ones who came out and crossed the deadlines and broke the rules and broke the superstitions which were there in the mind and hearts of the people in earlier times. So, without wasting time, let's start. In the previous chapter, you learned how the reformers of the 19th century focused on the issues of women's emancipation. Another social evil they battled against was the caste system, which is an inherent feature of the Indian society. Emancipation means setting up women from the rule and burden of male contingents, and also they focused on caste system. The caste system evolved from the Varna system of the Aryans. In the Rig Vedic age, the Aryan society was divided into four groups. Means caste system was evolved from the time period of Aryans, and Rig Vedic time pay the caste system was divided, and the Aryan society was divided into four periods and four groups. These groups were based on occupations: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. However, this system was flexible. People could change their occupation and thus their varna. Means, suppose if I am in Shudra category and if I get promoted, if I get a new job, I can get myself shifted to some other category. I can belong then to Brahma, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. The membership was not hereditary, means it was not passed from generation to generation. A person can get its group changed after getting a good job or after securing a good position in the society. A number of new occupations emerged during the later Vedic age, becoming and making the Varna system complex and rigid. So many more things got added up and hence made this system a more complex one. Gradually, it evolved into the caste system in which birth of a person, not their occupation, became the basis of social division. And after some of the complex rituals and after some of the complex additions, this system got more complex and hence and since then it got set up that yes, it became a hereditary one. Suppose if my grandparents were of Brahmin caste, then I too will be considered as a Brahmin caste person only because this thing got considered as an hereditary. So now let's move on our very next heading, that is fight against casteism. In the 19th century, an effort was made by the reformers to modernize the Indian society. Means reformers were in full efforts to help Indians get to back to their modernization. Many of these reformers were influenced by the ideas of equality and liberty and worked towards removing evils like caste and untouchability. Means so many people came forward to remove caste and untouchability factors, but unfortunately, due to some various reasons, they were not able to. But somehow, up to some extent, they got succeeded as well. Next heading is emergence of consciousness. The reformers of the 19th century identified the caste system as a form of inequality and a hindrance to a national unity. Hindrance means a barrier. They fought for the eradication of casteism. They fought to remove caste from the caste system from their society. Raja Ram Mohan Roy translated an old Buddhist text which criticized at the caste system. He translated the old Buddhist text, means translation was there, Buddhist text was there, he translated it into some other language, basically in Hindi, so as to show that yes, they also criticize caste system. Caste system is something which is polluting the society. Many leaders of the Brahmo Samaj such as Tara Chandra Chakrabarti and Keshav Chandra Sen were fierce critics of the caste system. They were critics, they were never happy with the caste system, and they always said that the caste system should be demolished from the society. Ramakrishna and his disciple Swami Vivekananda strongly condemned the caste system and untouchability. They said that caste system is something which should not be practiced. We all should live as a whole and as one. Vidyasagar, when he became principal of the Sanskrit College in Calcutta, ended the tradition of admitting only Brahmin students and opened the doors of higher education to students from all castes. This initiative was praised by all over the India, and everybody was very happy with the decision that he took and got praised. In 1840, the Paramahansa Mandali was founded in Bombay to work towards the abolition of the caste system. This Mandali was basically formed to remove caste system. The Prarthana Samaj in Maharashtra reiterated the tradition of bhakti and propagated the spirituality equality of all castes. Means they just tried their best to set up a kind of environment where each and everyone is practicing each and every environment and each and every caste and each and every religion. There should not be anything which is hindering the barriers and which is hindering the progress of these reformers. Mahadev Govind Ranade, an eminent social reformer and one of the founder members of Purna Sarvajanik Sabha, advocated intercaste dining and intercaste marriage. He was the one to promote all of this, and he said that intercaste marriage and intercaste dining should be allowed. His close associate Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, who was also one of the founding members of the Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, worked for the removal of caste barriers, child marriage, and advocated the cause of women's education. Basically, he focused on these three factors which were a major issue at the time. These reform movements created awareness among the so-called lower caste, and people of the lower caste again took an initiative to come forward with the full force and full power and got and raised their voice to get justice and some rights which they were kept deprived. The Christian missionaries played an important role in the battle against the caste system. They also came forward. They set up many schools in areas with large tribal and so-called lower caste population. Means they also took an initiative. Children from these communities were often deprived of education. The missionary schools equipped them to understand life in the changing world. Means the missionary schools picked those children and got them studied and gave them the proper education which they were deprived of before joining the school. The colonial period in India saw the emergence of many new cities that offered new reforms of job opportunities to the people. Means as the time was passing, new cities were formed, and when these new cities were formed, there were more job opportunities. So people got that chance and got their jobs done and secured. There was a huge demand of cheap labor for jobs like coolies, diggers, carriers, bricklayers, sewage cleaners, sweepers, palanquin bearers, and rickshaw pullers. So many jobs were there. Though they didn't talk about the kind of riching or poorness of the jobs, they are talking about that job opportunity, and people at the time were very much ready to work for that kind of things also. Often the poor and the so-called lower caste found a way to escape caste oppression by migrating from one place to another and from rural areas to cities and taking up these jobs. This was a kind of good thing as they moved to a newer place where this kind of caste system and the problem related to caste system was less, which gave them an opportunity to relive their lives. Many of them were employed as plantation laborers too, because at a time Britishers also had that issue. They were looking forward for the person who can look after their plantation, which we already discussed in the previous chapter. They were sent to Assam, Mauritius, Trinidad, and Indonesia. The life as a plantation worker was not easy, but it presented an opportunity to escape the exploitation by the upper caste. It was not easy, but it was not that difficult also. They really faced a lot of problems when they lived in rural areas and got depressed and suppressed by upper caste. Next comes organized caste movements. As the name suggests, caste movements means their campaigns which were there in an organized way. Most of the early reformers who stood against the caste system were from the upper caste, means they were the ones those who raised their voice against the caste system were already from the upper castes. In order to put the idea of social equality into practice, they often violated the caste norms, means being a kind of person who never faced any discrimination on the caste, even if they are coming forward and they came forward to help the persons who are in need. This shows that yes, they had a very good, genuine reasons. They were very good in ethics, they were very good in discipline. That's why they gave their choices a kind of realm so that they can take some major actions for the ones who are suffering and who suffered at the time. However, the fight against the caste system remained largely theoretical until the second half of the 19th century. Second half of the 19th century means 1950 afterwards, because there were people who got discriminated on the basis of their caste, gender, color, religion, and status level. So many things were there. Keeping that into mind, like after that, like some laws, rules, and regulations were made. Guru Ghasidas, a leather worker, founded the Sadnami movement in central India, which demanded social rights for leather workers. Haridas Thakur of the Mathura sect organized the lower caste Chandala cultivators of eastern Bengal and questioned the idea of Brahmanical superiority. He was the one who said that yes, if a person is of Brahmin caste, it does not mean that the person will do anything. It means that he has got Brahminical caste. then it should be like that he should be praised, but it should not be like that he is considering him as a superior person. He is no one to decide the laws, rules, and regulations. So that was the point which came into mind at the time on his mind, and which gave them the power to raise their voice against the wrong practices. Jyotirao Phule was the strongest proponent of the anti-caste movement in Maharashtra. He initiated that. Being a member of the Mali caste, he himself faced caste discrimination. Jyotirao Phule was the one who actually faced a lot of discrimination. He argued that the so-called lower caste are the original inhabitants of the country and they have the right over the land and other natural resources of the country. He told that yes, they are the ones who really have the right and they should not be discriminated and they should not be told about anything, that they cannot go here, they cannot touch that, they cannot eat with the high caste people. These are the kind of things that prevailed in that time of the society. He wanted to unite the laboring caste and untouchables against the caste-based discrimination. In 1873, he founded the Satya Shodhak Samaj, which worked for the rights of the lower caste and untouchables. Phule was against all forms of discrimination. He just tried his best to provide the lower caste people their rights and to have them and to try not to have them any kind of discrimination. In South India, Virsalingam called for caste reforms in Andhra Pradesh, deeply inspired by the ideas of the Brahmo Samaj. He founded the Rajamundry Social Reform Association and set up schools for untouchables and working classes. And this was a very big initiative which was taken by him. The Ezhavas organized themselves under Sri Narayan Guru, a famous social reformer from Kerala who believed in the ideal of universal equality. He just told that yes, everybody has a right to feel free equality. He propagated the idea of Oru Jati, Oru Matam, Oru Davyam, Manushyan, one caste, one religion, one God, and humankind for humankind. In 1903, the Sri Narayan Dharma Paripalan Yogam was founded. इसको हम लोग शॉर्ट फॉर्म में SNDPY भी कहते हैं, which worked for the improvement of the socially marginalized. Marginalized people were the one who were considered to be of backward classes. E.V. Ramaswamy Naikar, popularly known as Periyar, led the anti-caste movement in Tamil Nadu. Periyar was a prominent figure in the national movement as well. He became a member of the Indian National Congress but felt in was dominated by the upper caste. Means he was a kind of person who was a part of National Congress Party, but being a major person of the Congress Party, he just himself felt that yes, he was being discriminated and dominated. Periyar believed that the untouchables have to fight for their rights themselves. With this objective, he founded the self-respect movement. And he just got that idea in his mind that yes, he is the one to take actions for anyone. He is the one to raise his voice for anyone. If people want the rights, people should come out of their fear and should come out of their comfort zones. And that's why he just founded the self-respect movement, which gave the people of lower caste a plight to take a new flight and take her to fly to a new height, and this was successful up to a very good extent. In the 20th century, Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar became the most dominant figure of the anti-caste movements. Coming from the Mahar community, Ambedkar himself experienced caste-based discrimination in his childhood. He was the one who was the prominent figure of 20th century and also told that yes, he experienced a lot of problems because he also belonged to that caste based wala discrimination family. He wrote extensively to highlight the dominance of the upper caste in the society. He wrote a lot about it and just took an major initiative so as to force and focus on the things. Between 1927 and 1935, he led a number of movements to secure the rights of the untouchables to enter temples. Means he just took some major actions between 1927 and 1935. He just started a good number of movements so that he can ask people, he can motivate people to move to the temples of which they were deprived of. Drafting committee of our constitution. The Constitution of India provides for the equality of all citizens, irrespective of their caste, creed, and religion, as one of its core objectives. And he was the one who drafted the committee of our Constitution, and that drafting committee contains and symbolizes a good number of objectives which were covered, which are still covered, and which motivates and focuses on a large number of problems which people face at a time. and they just made sure that yes, now they don't face anything like that. Coming on our next heading, that is British government and the caste system. Let's know about it. What are the implications that Britishers took against the caste system? The Indian reformers of the 19th century initially received support from the British, means they got support from the British. The role of William Bentinck was instrumental in the abolition of the sati system. He played a very good role in abolishing the role and in abolishing the sati system, which was a major issue at the time. However, the situation changed after the revolt of 1857. On the one hand, the British decided to adopt a policy of non-interference in the terms of social issues. On the other hand, they tried to exploit the caste division in the Indian society to prevent the emergence of a united nation. They just told that yes, they will be focusing on removing of sati pratha, but after revolt of 1557, they changed their mind. They just passed a law in which it was clearly stated that they will not be interfering in any of the matter of Indian community people. And but on the second hand, they just also made sure that yes, if they will not interfere, then people will get united, and if people will get united, then they will fight as a whole against them, which will be a big issue. So they started intervening against in the community of the people. The anti-caste movement led by the Indians hardly received any support or encouragement from the colonial government. Means anti-caste movements which were going on at the time, which were active at that time, did not receive any support. Although it received a support in the starting, but after 1857, it didn't receive any support. Moreover, from the early 20th century, the British government started caste-based classification in the census with the aim of furthering their divide and rule policy. They further basically focused on divide and rule and wanted to divide and segregate Indians on the basis of their caste and religion. And they got successful and succeeded up to some extent. However, this very practice contributed to the development of caste consciousness and in turn paved the way of organized caste system. And from there, organized caste system got into existence, and SC, ST, and OBC got and came under consideration from that way. Let's continue with Gandhi and the era idea of caste. It was in the Gandhian era that crucial issues were included in the mainstream anti-British political movement. It's the above three first three lines means that yes, since the Gandhian period they have been focusing on such kind of caste system. As we know about that, he was Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi was the one to take an initiative to remove untouchability from the society. Gandhi was vocal against the caste system, and he believed that freedom from the British rule would only be meaningful if it was accompanied by freedom from social evils. And he just knew that yes, one can be and one can attend such kind of things only when they can work and come as a whole. Mahatma Gandhi declared untouchability a sin, a kind of condemnment of problem, a devil, and fought for its eradication from the society and did his best to remove untouchability from the society. Gandhiji called the untouchables Harijans. Harijans means children of God. And in 1932, he founded the Harijan Sevak Sangh, a kind of community which focuses on and which focused on untouchables and which demanded social justice and equal rights for the untouchables. Gandhiji also tried making the upper caste aware of the sin of untouchability through his writings in Hindi and English. He just wanted upper caste people also to know more about that how it feels like to be an untouchable, and he did that by his writings and praising and teachings. His ashram at Sabarmati was open to all irrespective of their caste and class. It doesn't matter that who and which category a person belongs to, the caste system was not an option for him. He opened his doors of his ashrams for each and every one. There was no restrictions of any caste or class. Response of the upper caste, that what impact upper castes people provided on his writings. The response of the upper caste to the caste system and caste movement resulted in two basic tendencies. There were two results. While some enlightened members acknowledged the shortcomings of the caste system and fought for reform, means some people came forward with a positive mindset, the orthodox section reacted by establishing associations such as Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha and the Bharat Dharma Mandala, and two communities were found. Maintaining the caste distinction and validating it as an important institution of Hinduism were the main objectives of these associations. And the associations which were found had two main motives, that they wanted to focus on removing and eradicating the caste system from the society. Up to some extent, they were successful, and it is still availing and prevailing in some part of the community of the Indian society, because people still believe that yes, they are the superior ones and less a very few people are the ones who have the tendencies and the rights to live properly in the society. So students, this was all from my side. I hope you all understood the concept and the plots of caste system and the problems the reformers faced. For more information, you can access internet, you can read some articles from the internet, you can go through the videos from YouTube, and for more purpose, you can go through a thorough reading that will definitely help you much. So take care, study well, and good luck with your career.